Now, this happened to one of my friends when she was at college, and this happened sometime in late of 2016. My friend at the time of the story, we'll call her Jasmine, and she was in college for at least 2 years. At the time of the story, Jasmine had broke up with her boyfriend due to him cheating on her, and he tried to get out of this by saying, "It wasn't my fault, I was lonely," and anything he would to try to get her to believe that it wasn't his fault. But Jasmine knew this was BS, so she ended up stopped talking to him and moved on. However, though, after she got out of college, her roommates were pretty nice, but they were rarely at the dorm till late at night. They either go to parties or go hang out with friends until afterwards, which in this case, Jasmine was alone in her dorm. She got this app that was pretty popular called WhatsApp, and she made an account and started talking to people. First she added was a couple of her friends, and then another was just random people that she's never seen. Till one day this one person by the name of James messaged her and asked her how she was doing. Jasmine said that she was doing good and started talking to this James person. James also said that he really likes her profile pic and all that, and asked her some questions like what college she went to. Jasmine didn't think of this at the time, so she just stated her college and where she is and all that. Then James asked Jasmine if he could have her number, which she gladly gave it to him. Big mistake right there. Now later on, I think after class, James would always message Jasmine about her date and that. This had been going on for at least a month or so when something really messed up happened. Now, this was at least a few weeks before Jasmine's exam, before Christmas break. So Jasmine was driving home from what seemed to be to do errands. Then she came across this weird car. For some reason, this looked like a Chevrolet, and it looked like a van, but she had no idea if and this was any familiar. She thought that maybe this guy's name was James, and James says, "Hey, I'm in that Chevrolet truck." But it turns out it was actually a van, and he said truck. There was no van, but that was a different van that drove past and saw the Chevrolet truck. Jasmine even looked to see that there were maybe two men inside. Obviously, Jasmine felt very uncomfortable and drove a long way back to the dorm so the guy will get the hint not to follow her. It wasn't long after that when Jasmine blocked the number and even blocked James on WhatsApp. What's really freaky though is that Jasmine woke up the next day with 20 plus messages on WhatsApp with another message that says James saying, "Hi, how are you?" The messages came from that to who "Don't ever talk to me again." Jasmine honestly wanted to report it to the police, but there was not really many evidence to describe it. But then the school, or at least the university office, ended up calling Jasmine over. When Jasmine got to the office of the college, she was honestly said that there was something really messed up. There was somebody who had been taking photos of girls inside their dorms, and one of the pictures was very disturbing. One of them was Jasmine, who was sleeping. They still don't know who this James guy is, and Jasmine's glad that James had been blocked from WhatsApp and on her phone. She had not used WhatsApp since then, but she still wonders why this James guy wanted her so badly. She still consents that to this day, but although the questions are still in her mind. To give a little bit of backstory, this actually happened to one of my closest friends, and let's call him Chris. Chris was about maybe 16 at the time of the story when this happened. Unfortunately, he and his girlfriend had broke up as his girlfriend was moving and Chris could no longer visit her due to her being far away. Now, to cut to the chase, Chris was looking on certain websites such as Tinder and all that. He found someone on Tinder named Melissa. Melissa messaged Chris on Instagram saying, "Hey, you look cute in that." She seemed to be the same age as Chris, and Chris started messaging Melissa, and they got on really well. As they were texting each other back and forward, they think everything was all cool and great. Everything was going so swell, until maybe at least a day or so later, when things started to get weird. Now, for some reason, Melissa was not comfortable with FaceTime, and of course, like Chris, always the good man he was, respected that. But he always wondered why she was not comfortable with him FaceTiming her. He was quite confused and thought maybe she was just shy, which is normal for some people. So, as that was going on, Melissa ended up texting Chris every day. Chris would get on his phone almost every day and start texting her. Then one day, Melissa asked Chris if she would like to meet him at a burger joint. So Chris replied saying yes, and he got his parents to drop him off. But however though, he was dropped off at a gas station, which of course was not far from the burger joint, and it wasn't far from his house. So Chris ended up texting Melissa saying that he was there, and the burger joint looked pretty dead. Of course it was late at night, so there was barely any cars at this hour. But it wasn't really long until something strange began happening. Chris ended up looking over to see that there was this white car, and appearing inside, there was an iPhone. The iPhone was apparently broken, which explains why Chris had not gotten a response from Melissa. Then outside, not far from the alleyway, there was a man. He looked like to be maybe in his 40s, and he had two people. "Get him," the man said, pointing at Chris. Chris ended up running down, screaming for help, and he ran inside the gas station and explained about the issue to the cash register. The cashier at the corner store ended up calling Chris's parents and the cops. Of course, when the cops got there, the people were already gone, and there was no trace of their vehicle. Their vehicle was what seemed to be a Ford van, which was the 2010 model. Of course, the police had no idea about why they were there until Chris ended up explaining to his parents that he was going to the burger joint to meet Melissa. But it turns out there was no Melissa, and that man who used a fake name was trying to lure Chris out of his house to meet him. Now, still to this day, Chris has never touched social media the same way again, but he has never went on Instagram after this story. So this kind of happened to me on Tumblr sometime in 2017, and I honestly have no idea what to explain anymore. Sometime in early of 2017, it was probably around I guess you could say, January. Now, Tumblr was a really popular app at the time, and I got it because a couple of my friends had it, and they suggested to get it because it's pretty interesting. I had Tumblr since I guess 2016, but didn't really use it. The only time I would go on Tumblr is to talk to some people. Some people would reblog about certain things, some people would roleplay, and etc. I became interactive with a lot of people, wanting to make friends and be friendly to everybody. However though, something really strange happened when one user by the name of Gould showed up. He introduced himself as Riley, and he was a little older than me. He was probably maybe 23, and meanwhile I was 18 years old. I said to him that I'm doing pretty good, and we started heading off well, asking some questions. Then that way he asked me if I wanted to, be his girlfriend, which I agree, even though that was sometime in February when he asked me. However, it wasn't until April when snow was mostly going away and we had more rain. It was a rainy night when I was texting one of my friends, Riley. Now, Riley started asking me some rather inappropriate and very personal questions. He asked me to take photos of some places that I will not say. But I ended up telling him to please stop doing that and telling him that it was making me uncomfortable. He said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." Then I continued talking to him again, and nothing really happened. However, one day after school, though, I looked to see that there was a loud bang coming from my door, and I saw that there was a strange man in front of my house. I honestly had no idea who it was, so my dad, who came home from work that day, ended up asking me who he was. He was gone, though, by the time I reached the door, but that was when I was on my way to school. I ended up telling my dad about this guy who was showing up at my house, so my dad ended up calling the cops. The cops didn't find the man, but however, Riley started messaging me more and more, asking me more really messed up photos. He even started sending photos of himself in a really inappropriate photos. I ended up telling him to stop and telling him that it was making me uncomfortable, but he ended up keep doing it anyway. I finally had the courage to block him, and I didn't even tell my parents about this. For the next little while, I can see that there was that same figure who was standing by my door or the day I was coming home from school, or even going to school, and he was staring around my house for a little while. But within a month or two, he had stopped, and Riley has not bothered me since. Still to this day, you gotta be careful when you're dating someone online, because you never know who is truly on the other side.